Today we're going to be reviewing a book exclusively on choking techniques. Hi, my name is Joe, and welcome to my YouTube channel, Fighting Words, the martial arts library. So, today I'm going to be reviewing a book called Shimewaza. This book was published independently in 2013. The author is Kevin Flynn, who has multiple ranks in traditional jiu-jitsu styles. And you can find the book on lulu.com. In Japanese martial arts, Shimewaza, S-H-I-M-E, refers to choking or strangling techniques. Anyway, at the beginning of the book, the intro, sort of goes over the chokes that one can expect to find, as well as different ground fighting positions. It goes over, among other things, resuscitation techniques. It mentions them, but then it says, and I'm happy for this, that the primary method of resuscitation is CPR. Because anyone who has looked at especially older books on Judo and Jujitsu, there's I think it's called Kappo Jutsu, which is, ways of resuscitating someone when they've passed out. And it's weird things like, kneeing somebody in the back, or like pounding on their foot, the sole of their foot, or, kicking them in the in the lower back. A lot of weird stuff. So I'm glad that this book will sort of default to, this is the right, medically approved, correct way of dealing with this particular incident if it occurs. Also in this section, we get parts on the anatomy of chokes and strangles, as well as the different grips that one can use. I have to say, some of the terms he uses for the different grips are unfamiliar to me. I'm going to start off by calling out what I think is incorrect terminology when he's talking about guard work. So there's a position that he refers to as butterfly guard, and that's when your opponent is on top of you between your legs. He says the butterfly guard is when you have your feet in the hips. This, in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu circles, is known as feet on hips guard. And then he has another position where the insteps are underneath the opponent's thighs, and he refers to that as like gaucho guard, which in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu circles is referred to as butterfly guard. I'm unsure why there's such inconsistency, especially for a book that was published in 2013. But I assume he's using terminology that was introduced to him from another source. Now, the book itself is organized, once you get past the introduction, by the type of choke being executed. And it usually has the English language name as well as the Japanese name for it, which I appreciate. So you will get organized by, rear naked choke, and sleeve wheel choke, and triangle choke. And I think that organization in particular is valuable. There's actually kind of a lot of leg assisted chokes, more than I was expecting. There's also an abundance of how to apply these chokes from different positions, including standing, including kneeling, and from various ground positions. If your opponent is on their forequarters, their hands and knees, if your opponent is in various guard positions, if you have like knee on belly or mount or any of those. So as far as just like classifying the types of chokes available and the many variations. I think the book does an excellent job at that. Now, one thing you're also going to find with this is that there are a lot of variations of the same choke. You know, and like I think there's something like 8 variations of the rear naked choke, including different grips. I will quibble a bit with the mechanics of one of them. They refer to it as a rear or as a naked choke. It's a leg assisted choke, and got your leg across the back of the guy's neck, and you grab your own ankle, and then, you know, ankle and wrist, and get a choke that way. The mechanics I question, and the terminology that we're even referring to that, you know, filing it under the same category as a, you know, a hadagajime. Mechanically, I said that he grabbed his ankle. That's incorrect. You grab your foot. The reason we try not to do that when we are grappling, you know, if you were taught the triangle choke, particularly from guard, you were taught to not actually grab your foot or your toes when executing the choke because you bend at the ankle. And if you're grabbing your foot to pull it toward you and your opponent's body is resisting, you can actually damage the tendons in your own foot. You know, which is why when we are taught to apply the rear naked choke, we grab the ankle, you know, the bottom of the shin, basically. So, you know, of the techniques listed, that's one that I'm like, yeah, I would adjust that. I don't think it requires a tremendous amount of adjustment. You just grab your ankle, sit at your toes, but, you know, it's, if I am going to recommend this to people, but that particular maneuver is not one that I would recommend too highly. Another notable thing is that a lot of the approaches to these chokes are more from a, I would say more of a judo perspective. So, you know, there's a lot of, you know, the opponent is belly down kind of maneuvers, whereas in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, we'd be looking at more like, you know, being on top of half guard or something like that. I'm not sure that there's any chokes from those positions here. Another noticeable absence is the guillotine choke, or any variations thereof, as well as any arm included choke, like the arm triangle or the darce or anaconda. So I think that's interesting. This is listed as volume 1, and it does say in the intro that they were intending to do 2 volumes. This was published in 2013. This will be 11 years, and the last time I checked Lulu on this particular page, there was no volume 2. So, as far as the pros and cons go, the pros, there are quite an abundance of gi chokes in here. I think the primer on safety is very important, and I like the inclusion of standing chokes, which you don't see a whole lot. I think standing chokes in particular are pretty applicable to more like self-defense type scenarios. So all those things are really big positives. It's not entirely exhaustive when it comes to chokes, but it covers a broad variety of chokes. So props to that. As far as the cons go, the photos unfortunately are a little bit on the dark side. There's not a whole lot of contrast to them, so I think it makes it a little bit harder to understand what's going on sometimes. I've already mentioned that I have some issues with some of the terminology and, you know, the mechanics of that one particular choke. And, you know, a small nitpick is, I think that it would be easier to tell what was going on if the sequences were numbered, like this is photo 1 and this is photo 2 and this is what's happening here. It shouldn't take away too much, but just, again, a small point. I think it would have been easier if it had included that. So, who would I recommend this book to? If you practice a gi grappling art, especially if you are like beginner or intermediate, I think this is a good reference for the different types of chokes that are out there. Like I said, it's sort of a hefty book, and it doesn't even include every choke possible. It includes quite a variety of gi-based chokes, including usually multiple variations and entries to them. So I think it's an excellent reference point for that. If you are interested in self-defense, I think that this is a pretty good primer on choking techniques, particularly the sections on standing chokes. I think that those are very valuable. We can talk about, it's a broad subject about whether or not grappling as a medium is useful for self-defense. I think the ability to choke an opponent, an attacker, unconscious in a matter of seconds is a tremendous benefit of grappling in that environment. So if you're going to pick one thing, pick escapes from hold downs. If you're going to pick two things, maybe pick standing chokes, because again, somebody can't attack you if they're unconscious. So anyway, that's all I really have. I think it's a decent book. There are some minor points that I gripe with and a few little nitpicks, but on the whole, a really good book when it comes to demonstrating a broad array of primarily gi-based chokes and strangles. So that's all I have for this week, and I'll see you guys next week. Thank you.